welcome to another exciting edition of one of my videos. Today, I'm going to discuss some memos in Silent Hill 2. This doesn't have anything to do with the Twin Perfect doc. It's just stuff that I noticed in Silent Hill 2. Mostly this is analyzing the memos. And there's, well, first of all, you got the Otherworld, of course. And by the start of the game, it appears that the player enters the Otherworld and is unaware of it. Because if you've ever watched the making of Silent Hill 3, the creators had said that they wanted to go back to the shifts in the Otherworld that were obvious, and in the second game they weren't obvious. And I think there's only a couple points in the game of the second game that it shows, you know, it's obviously changed to the Otherworld. Well, there's some curious discrepancies in the memos, and it makes me start to think that people in Silent Hill, or at least some of the most disturbed people mentally, are able to go back and forth in the Otherworld. They may not actually stay there. Unlike James, who is there all the time. When looking at the memos in Silent Hill 2, you will notice that in Brookhaven, in the Doctor's Journal, it talks about the other side, where reality and unreality intersect. As he says, this is a place that lies both close and distant, and this could refer to the mind, since the other world is obviously connected to minds and can manifest anywhere. And although some say that it's not an illness, he says that he's not a philosopher, he's a psychiatrist, so it's none of his, concern, even though psychiatry actually does have some philosophy in it. But then the memo goes on to say something curious. But sometimes I have to ask myself a question. It's true that to us his imaginings are nothing but the inventions of a busy mind. But to him, there's simply no other reality. Furthermore, he is happy there. So why, I ask myself, why in the name of healing must we drag him painfully into the world of our own reality? Well, it doesn't just stop there. There's a couple of other memos, that are pretty interesting. First, we come upon this memo, I took the director's key. I took the director's key, the one to the museum, I left it behind, the praying woman, and when I went out for the day trip, I picked it up, but I did not steal it. I am not a criminal. So then James receives this scribble on a map about there's a letter and a wrench. And it says something very curious. It's very kind of vague. So if we take into the account that unlike some people are, certain people have unstable minds, and some people are there all the time in the other world, while other people are there on and off, and then you got regular people who are not in the other world at all. Like, for example, Heather at the beginning of the third game. She started out before meeting Douglas not having anything to do with the other world. The memo sounds very vague. He was not bold enough to be stared at from across the abyss, is not bold enough to stare into himself. The truth can only be learned by marching forward. Follow the map, there's a letter and a wrench. Now, this just sounds to you like mumbo jumbo, like, you can make a lot of assumptions about it. But the word abyss is actually connected with water. And in the next memo, he expands on it, talking about the historical society, that a part of the abyss is in the historical society. Now, if you look up the dictionary, just the regular dictionary definition of abyss, you will get a deep immeasurable space, gulf or cavity, vast chasm. Then you get anything profound, unfathomable, or infinite. And in ancient cosmology, the primal chaos before creation the infernal regions, hell, are a subterranean ocean. Now, he's mentioning this in conjunction with another memo that comes up that is probably written by the same person. And that person is probably the Brookhaven director, as we had seen with the original memo about him taking the director's key, and the director knew about it. It's called The Key in the Park. And it's obviously addressed to James. So this person knows what's going on with James. Even though he's unseen in the game, kind of like the phone caller. The memo goes, "Oh, perhaps you're a fool. The truth usually betrays people." And obviously, if you played Silent Hill 2, you know what the truth is. A part of the abyss is in the old society. And then he goes on describing where it is. And he knew his patient buried it there. "I wasn't looking for truth," he says. "I was looking for tranquility. I also saw that thing, whatever that thing is. The memo doesn't go into detail about. I fled, but the museum was sealed as well. Now no one dares to approach that place. If you still do not wish to stop, James, I pray to the Lord to have mercy on your eternal soul." A part of the abyss is in the old society. And then he talks about the abyss in the earlier memo on the map scribbling, that if somebody is not bold enough to stare into the abyss, they're not bold enough to stare into themselves. I can't quite figure out what... This is very vague to me, and I don't know the original Japanese. It probably does say abyss, but I don't know what word it uses or any connotation or context, because Japanese is a very contextual language. But the abyss, it sounds like it's in conjunction with the lake. A lake is going to have a literal abyss, like a, just a deep, like Crater Lake in Oregon. It's going to be completely infinite deep, 1,000 feet deep or whatever. That's going to be abyss. But the statements by the memos seem to indicate that the abyss is part of the other world, and that if you go into this abyss, you will learn the truth. And that a part of this abyss is in the historical society, and perhaps the prison, and most certainly the labyrinth. The labyrinth is probably a bridge across into normal reality from the abyss. I'm pretty sure the labyrinth is not there in normal reality. I'm pretty sure it's just a part of the unreality of the other world. So, you got this very vague statement in this abyss being kind of maybe a gateway and also a part of the other world and a part of the lake. But it seems to be more than just a literal part of the lake. If we take into account that the little Baroness and the next few memos, the memo you get in the prison about the little Baroness, the ship that went out on the lake, and we take that into account and it disappeared, perhaps it had crossed a line with the abyss. And the fact that the memo says that no one approaches that place, and that the museum and everything is sealed as well, but I don't think it's sealed literally in the real world, because he also mentions running into that thing. And Silent Hill's a big tourist trap. Then I'm thinking something else, like this person's in the other world, and that the patients also went into the other world, and nobody wants to approach the abyss because you basically stare into yourself and you find out the truth. And if you go into the prison, when when you're transcending into the labyrinth outside of the morgue, you start getting more holes, and you start getting holes in the prison too. And in Lost Memories it says that the other world can manifest anywhere because of people's minds, but Silent Hill's unique power is that it can also manifest what's in people's hearts. And the holes are a metaphor for the holes in the heart that James has from his sin, from killing Mary, and his guilt and everything with that. And it sounds like this abyss amplifies that power. It's like an an amplification unit, and most of it must be in the water. If you think of water as a gateway to the other world, which it is in a lot of different religions, most notably Mexican religions or Mexican traditions, where and also caves, where puddles or reflective surfaces are gateways to the other world. You could think of it as the abyss is a metaphorical gateway into yourself, but also it's a literal gateway, because the lake is obviously huge and vast, and I don't know how deep Toluca Lake is. I mean, I don't know the statistics or anything about Toluca Lake, but we know it's huge, so it's got to be pretty deep. So that's going to be another part of the abyss. And then there's like a third metaphor here, and you can combine all of these metaphors. Is that it's also, and maybe it's a mix of literal and metaphoric, it's also probably a gateway into the other world, or possible gateway. And then the fourth thing is that I think it's a part that is real amplified. The statements are really vague, but really curious. And the abyss, to my knowledge, there's no reference to an abyss in the other games. And that's because a lot of them don't deal directly with Toluca Lake like Silent Hill 2 does, or water. That might change with Downpour, but Downpour isn't out right now, so I'm not going to deal with that. But that's what I wanted to point out, because I thought this analysis was pretty interesting. It appears that the memos are written by the Brookhaven director, because he knew his patient buried it there, and he knew he had the director's key. And but it could be a doctor, but I doubt it. He's not looking for truth, so he's probably got something to hide. And I bet some other people have something to hide too. And it's like a psychological thing not to go there, because you know you're going to find out the truth. I'm sure it's not as severe as James, though. I don't think they're sinners or anything. I just think they're delusional, just normal people. And then, you see that no one dares to approach the place. So I guess that the town taking people, or at least mentally unstable people, knowing about the power of the town in the other world is probably more common knowledge in Silent Hill than we realize.